Welcome to Futility Closet, a celebration of the quirky and the curious, the thought-provoking and the simply amusing. This is the audio companion to the popular website that catalogs more than 8,000 curiosities in history, language, mathematics, literature, philosophy, and art. You can find us online at futilitycloset.com. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to episode 15. I'm Greg Ross, the creator of Futility Closet, and with me is my wife and co-host, Sharon Ross. In today's show, we'll investigate the mysterious disappearance of 3 Scottish lighthouse keepers in 1900, ponder the whereabouts of Robert Louis Stevenson's birthday, and consider why drinking a glass of water necessitates a call to the Auto Club. This week I want to talk about the Flannan Isles mystery, which is sort of a classic disappearance mystery involving 3 men who vanished from a Scottish lighthouse in 1900. It's a great story, but I think it's relatively little known, at least in America, and deserves, I think, wider knowledge. It's a great story, and it's still intriguing even now. What happened is this. A lighthouse was built on Eilean Moor, which is the largest of the Flannan Isles, beyond the Outer Hebrides in the North Atlantic. So it's about 80 miles from the Scottish mainland. It's a lonely area, and the lighthouse was built between 1895 and 1899, and was first lit on December 7th, 1899, and then all the engineers and workmen withdrew, leaving 3 keepers to man the lighthouse. And for a year, everything went fine. There was nothing really unusual to speak of. But then on December 5th, 1900, almost at the first anniversary of the lighthouse's existence, strange things started to happen. The first one was that a steamer called the Archtor, bound from Philadelphia to Leith, passed close to the islands on December 5th, and her captain was able to spot the light. The lighthouse should have been seen flashing. He could see the light, but he couldn't see it flashing. It wasn't doing anything. So he reported that when he got to port, but nothing seems to have been done about it. That was on December 5th. 3 weeks went by, and then the relief vessel Hesperus anchored off the eastern landing of the island just to, bring supplies and interact with the Lighthousemen. And it was immediately clear that something was wrong at that point. 3 things immediately struck them. First, there was a flagstaff that should have been bearing a flag, and that was bare. Mm-hmm. Second, the landing stage where they were landing the boat should have been piled up with provision boxes to be taken for refilling, and none of those were there. Okay. And most disturbing, the Lighthousemen should have been there to greet them, and they weren't.
And there were just no Lighthousemen.
There were 3 Lighthousemen assigned to that lighthouse, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur, and none of them were there. The captain let go 2 successive blasts on the steam whistle of his ship. Nothing happened. He fired a distress flare into the sky over the lighthouse. Nothing happened, so he lowered a boat, and a few men got to the island. One of them, Joseph Moore, who was a lighthouseman himself, climbed up these steep steps up the cliff and got to the lighthouse and found this. The entrance gate was closed, so was the entrance door, and so was the door inside that. He got inside and saw that the kitchen door was open, and through it he could see that the clock was stopped and the fire had not been lit for several days, and there was no one there. According to the regulations, there should always have been at least one man in the lighthouse, and there was no one there at all. He hadn't met anyone on the stairs either. He hadn't seen a soul on the island. He later wrote, "I did not take time to search further, for I only too well knew that something serious had occurred." He went back to the ship and told the second mate of his findings, and the 2 of them with the seamen returned to the light, and couldn't really find anything amiss, apart from the fact that the men weren't there. Everything was in good order. There was no sign of violence. Nothing seemed amiss, really. The light itself had been cleaned and refilled, and they couldn't see any reason why it shouldn't be operating. It simply wasn't. They couldn't find any sign of the keepers. So they all went back to the ship and gave their news to the captain, and he assigned 4 men to man the light that night and went back to the mainland to send a telegram to the Northern Lighthouse Board, which owned the light. And the following day, they began combing the island looking for clues. There wasn't much to comb. The whole island is only 29 acres. It's quite small. And they found little that was amiss. The island kind of rises like a crag straight out of the sea. There's not a shore properly. It's mostly surrounded by cliffs. So when they were building the lighthouse, they carved landings on the eastern and the western sides with concrete steps going up to the top just to be able to move things up and down. The ship, the Hesperus, had originally anchored off the eastern landing, and that was in pretty good order. There were still ropes neatly coiled in their place. Everything seemed pretty much as it should be. But on the western landing, the opposite side of the island, the one that faced out into the Atlantic, there were signs of tremendous violence. Basically, the way it's set up, there's the steps coming down to the landing, and above that is set a crane, which is used to lift things off of boats onto the landing. There was signs of great violence there. A wooden box that was used to store ropes and crane handles that was up sort of on a level with the crane had been torn from its position in a crevice of the rock 110 feet above sea level, which is astonishing, and its contents were strewn about. Also, the iron railing that surrounded the crane itself had been bent in an alarming fashion, and a large block of stone weighing more than a ton, even above that, had been displaced. And along the cliff top, the turf had been swept away for a distance of 30 feet, and that was 200 feet above high water. The superintendent who came to inspect this said that it's even worse than it sounds on paper. He said you sort of have to actually see this to comprehend the incredible scope of the violence. But there were no sign of the men. There were no bodies. There was a lot of violence to the equipment, but there was no sign of the men there.
I suppose they would know if there had been some incredible storm.
Well, I'm coming to that, actually. If you look at the logbook that was kept by the principal lighthouse keeper, this helps to fix the date of whatever it is that happened. It showed, first of all, that there was bad weather all through the month of December.
Okay.
But the entries go up until December 13th, and then that's in the logbook itself. But on a slate next to it, ready to be added to the log, are further entries for December 14th and up to 9 a.m. on December 15th. So it seems that everything was pretty normal up till at least 9 a.m. on the 15th.
Okay.
Further, they found that dishes and utensils had all been cleaned and put away for dinner, which was the midday meal on the 15th.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything's normal up to the midday of the 15th. And then that evening, that night, was the night that the Arch Tour, this other ship, had passed by and seen that the light wasn't functioning. So that seems to say that something happened on the afternoon of December 15th, 1900, but the question is what that was.
And it would have had to have been pretty sudden, because, if you take the time to do your dishes, obviously nothing seems wrong.
Which seems significant. It means that things weren't gradually unraveling and getting worse and worse. Things right up until the middle of the day on the 15th, as far as we can tell, were entirely normal. A further puzzling clue there, though, each man had sort of his own favorite set of foul-weather gear, either oilskins or a coat or something. And Joseph Moore, this relief lighthouseman, knew the other keepers well enough to know who wore what. So there were 3 different sets of recognizable outdoor clothes for bad weather. 2 of them were missing, but one of them wasn't. Donald MacArthur had a favorite coat that was in the locker. So that's confusing, too. If all 3 of them had to leave because of some calamity, it's odd that 2 of them would dress for the weather and one of them would run out in his shirt sleeves. It's just another puzzle. So basically that's pretty much the picture we're seeing. All 3 men left the lighthouse apparently on the afternoon of December 15th for some unknown reason and failed to return. And then the light was left unattended for another 11 days until December 26th when the relief boat, the Hesperus, arrived. But there were no clues to explain exactly what had happened. As I say, there were rules saying at least one man should have been at the lighthouse at all times, and yet all 3 were missing, and there was no sign of any of them. No bodies were ever found. And to this day, strictly speaking, that's all we know. No one knows what happened to them. It's a good mystery because there's so few clues, and it's such a small area, and so few even possibilities. That hasn't stopped people from speculating. We've had a century now, and you can imagine every possible idea has been floated. Murder, suicide, a sea serpent, kidnapping by foreign agents, a giant seabird, abduction by aliens, or some supernatural force that was just disturbed and unhappy that human beings were trespassing on this lonely rock.
Right.
There's no evidence for any of those things. The best guess, Robert Muirhead, who was the superintendent for the Northern Lighthouse Board, filed his report on January 8th after looking all over the island and thinking hard about it. And he said his best guess was that on the afternoon of December 15th, the 3 of them had gone down to the western landing, and some big unexpected roller had come in and swept them off the face of it. All 3 of them.
But one guy wasn't in his coat.
Exactly. That's the puzzle there, is why were 2 of them dressed for the weather and one of them not. So it seems like that's not quite the whole story. The best accounting of this whole and most thorough look at it that I've been able to find is by the meticulous Welsh historical writer Mike Dash, who says, quote, "Whatever happened to the 3 missing men, it must have happened to Ducat and Marshall first, and that MacArthur ran out of the lighthouse to aid them without waiting to don his coat."
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'll put his paper in the show notes. It's from Fortean Studies in the 1990s. So something happened to 2 of them. One of them came running up to get MacArthur. They went running out, and then something else happened.
Because you're supposed to leave one guy in the lighthouse at all times, so that would make sense to me that 2 of them went out, leaving one guy behind.
Yeah.
Unless whatever was unfolding, it was so bad that the 3rd guy ran out too.
Yeah, so the question is, what could that have been?
Right.
Great waves are certainly possible. One of the things they found is that a life buoy had been fixed to one of the iron railings at a height of 110 feet above the water, and that was missing. At first they thought that it had been unfastened in order to use it, but on closer inspection they found that it had actually been torn from the railings, leaving scraps of canvas on there. So it's not just that the waves were barely reaching up 110 feet.
Right.
They were actually surpassing that with such force and volume that they could actually tear a buoy off the railing. There's one of the things Dash found is there was the principal keeper on the island between 1953 and 1957 was a man named Walter Aldebert, who took a great interest in this and repeatedly took a camera out into terrible weather conditions to record the height of the largest waves. He says that on one occasion he was crouching on the shoulder of the island 200 feet above sea level, and he himself was nearly washed off the cliff. 200 feet. He says a coil of rope lying on top and too solid to be shifted by the wind was washed off. So apparently on the side of the island that's facing the Atlantic, it's just tremendous seas coming in there. And if you remember, the lighthouse had only been there for a year. The lighthousemen who were manning it were experienced, but weren't familiar with these circumstances and may not have realized how bad the sea could get.
How big the waves would actually get.
So that is Dash's theory. He thought that what happened was this. The 3 of them, everything was normal up until dinner time, the middle of the day, on December 15th, 1900. They finished dinner. MacArthur was washing up afterwards, and the other 2 went down to the west landing to secure these mooring ropes in this wooden box.
Okay.
They had been, the 3 of them, fined earlier for not securing that box, and so they would have been anxious to get down there and be sure it was secure.
Okay.
And then the theory goes that a wave took one of them while they were doing this. The other one ran up the steps to get MacArthur, who ran out without his coat.
Right.
But having finished the washing up after the meal.
Right.
And the 2 of them ran down and then were taken by another wave.
Wow.
And the bodies were never found. That, even in itself, that's the best theory anyone's come up with. But even that has a couple puzzles that remain. If the 3 of them left in haste, why were the gate, the front door, and the inside door all found to be closed? It's possible that the wind could have closed them, and in fact that seems like what must have happened, but it's kind of creepy that it would have done so. It's almost as if the wind wanted the scene to be as mysterious as possible. The other puzzle is, it's understandable that one big unexpected wave could have come up and taken one of them, but when the other 2 came down, they certainly would have been wary of that happening again, even if they were trying to reach someone who was in distress down in the water, and yet a second wave come up. So apparently that's maybe some combination of inexperience and terrible bad luck. But no one's been able to think of a better theory than that.
Yeah. Except for sea monsters, right?
Right, or sea monsters, one or the other. So that's all we know. 3 men disappeared from a lighthouse, and all we have are pretty good theories as to what happened, but no certainty.
It always seems kind of creepy when you have these stories and you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that. This one gets compared a lot, maybe someday I'll talk about this one, to the Mary Celeste, which is a much better known case where this British brigantine was discovered just floating in the Atlantic in 1872, and everything seemed pretty, to be in good order. There were no signs of violence or anything, but there were supposed to be 10 people aboard, and none of them were there. And to this day, no one knows what happened. In both cases, it seems reasonable to suppose that there's some perfectly mundane explanation for it.
That we just don't know.
But the fact that we don't know it still makes it kind of creepy.
Yeah.
One just sort of additional cap on this thing is this Robert Muirhead, who was the superintendent for the Northern Lighthouse Board, had to write up the final report, which he presented in 1901, sort of supposing what must have happened. And he realized when he was writing the report, he writes at the end there, he had visited all of them as recently as the relief visit of December 7th. And he says he realized, I was the last person to shake hands with them and bid them adieu, which means that he was the last one to see them and then found himself a month later having to write up that they'd vanished and no one knew what happened to them. Yeah. It's just kind of creepy. The lighthouse is still there, but as of September 1971, it's been automated. So it can't happen again. If there are any ghosts on Eilean Moor, they have no one to haunt.
We'll have a photo of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse in our show notes at blog.futilitycloset.com.
This episode is brought to you by Trunk Club. I hate shopping for clothes, and I know I'm not alone in that. But with Trunk Club, you don't have to. You can get great clothes that are perfect for you without having to go shopping. Here's how it works. You sign up on their website, and then they assign you to your own dedicated stylist who hand-selects a trunk of quality men's clothing specifically for you based on your own individual preferences, and they ship it to your door. And then you have 10 days to try everything on, you keep what you love, and send the rest back at their expense, so you're only paying for clothes that you love. They actually let me try this out a couple weeks ago, and I was honestly impressed. The sign-up on their website is a breeze. I think it only took 5 minutes. You just give them your measurements and tell them basically what your style is now. They assigned me to a stylist named Emily Warner, and I spent no more than 10 or 15 minutes with her on the phone. I told her what I'm wearing now, and she asked a few questions. And then 2 days later, a trunk showed up on our doorstep that was full of wonderful clothes that looked better and fit better than the clothes I pick out for myself.
Yeah, it really was impressive how well everything fit. Like you said, better than some of the clothes you have in your own closet. And she put together combinations of things that I don't think we would have thought to put together, but they really worked.
Yeah, everything did. So I had 10 days to look through everything and try it all on. I keep what I like and send the rest back. FedEx picks it up at our doorstep, and they pay for shipping both ways, so I'm only paying for the clothes that I want. And I can give feedback to Emily so she learns my preferences, and then if I need her again in the future, I can just call or email her and tell her, what I need, and she can fix me up. There are no upfront commitments. It's not a monthly subscription service. They won't send you anything unless you explicitly ask them to. We should note that they only ship to the continental U.S. at this time. Try it yourself. Sign up online, then chat with your own dedicated stylist and see if the service is a fit for you. Go to www.trunkclub.com/closet. That's www.trunkclub.com/closet so they know we sent you. From the North Atlantic, we go to the South Pacific. In 1891, a Vermont lawyer named Henry Clay Ide was appointed American Commissioner to Samoa in the South Pacific. So we went there in 1891 and met Robert Louis Stevenson, of all people. Stevenson's health was bad throughout his life, and he found himself happiest in the South Seas because of the climate, and had just moved there for his own health just a year before. Anyway, the two became friends, and at one point Ide told Stevenson that he had a little girl back home in Vermont whose name was Annie, and Annie was irate because she'd had the misfortune to have been born on December 25th, and she said she was thus cheated out of a birthday party like the other children have, which I'm sure she certainly was. My sister was born on the 23rd, and anyone born sort of in that time of the year, if you have a
Christmas,
birthday, it gets folded in with everything else. There's so many other holidays and celebrations that you don't get the benefit of a proper party. And
everybody's so focused on Christmas.
Yeah, so she was quite right, I think. Stevenson heard about that and got an idea and went back to his plantation on Samoa, which was called Valima, and wrote the following magnificent document. Valima, June 19th, 1891. I, Robert Louis Stevenson, advocate of the Scots Bar, author of The Master of Ballantry and Moral Emblems, stuck civil engineer, sole owner and patentee of the palace and plantation known as Valima in the island of Opolu, Samoa, a British subject, being in sound mind and pretty well, I thank you, in body, in consideration that Miss Annie H. Ide, daughter of H. C. Ide, in the town of St. Johnsbury in the county of Caledonia, in the state of Vermont, United States of America, was born out of all reason upon Christmas Day, and is therefore out of all justice denied the consolation and profit of a proper birthday, and considering that I, the said Robert Louis Stevenson, have attained an age when, we never mention it, and that I have now no further use for a birthday of any description, have transferred, and do hereby transfer, to the said Annie H. Ide, all and whole, my rights and privileges in the 13th day of November, formerly my birthday, now, hereby, and henceforth, the birthday of the said Annie H. Ide, to have, hold, exercise, and enjoy the same in the customary manner, by the sporting of fine raiment, eating of rich meats, and receipt of gifts, compliments, and copies of verse, according to the manner of our ancestors. And I direct the said Annie H. Ide to add to the said name of Annie H. Ide the name Louisa, at least in private, and I charge her to use my said birthday with moderation and humanity, et tamquam bona filia familia, the said birthday not being so young as it once was, and having carried me in a very satisfactory manner since I can remember. And in case the said Annie H. Hyde shall neglect or contravene either of the above conditions, I hereby revoke the donation and transfer my rights in the said birthday to the President of the United States of America for the time being. In witness whereof I have hereto set my hand and seal this 19th day of June in the year of grace 1891, Robert Louis Stevenson. So he wrote this up. He gave it to Henry Ide the next day. Henry sent it off to his wife with an explanation, and his wife hung it on the tree where Annie found it that Christmas morning and was delighted with it. You can imagine she'd been freed from a birthday on December 25th and got to meet Robert Louis Stevenson by letter at least. She wrote a letter of thanks to Stevenson, and they started up a correspondence. She sent photographs and drawings of herself, and apparently raised some metaphysical questions, which is interesting. If you give up your birthday, it would seem, you must either vanish instantly or live forever. But it's not clear which. She asked him some of these questions. We don't have her letter, but we have his response. He said, "You are thus become a month and 12 days younger than you were, but will go on growing older for the future in the regular and human manner from 1/13th of November to the next. The effect on me is more doubtful. I may, as you suggest, live forever. I might, on the other hand, come to pieces like the one-horse shay at a moment's notice. Doubtless the step is risky, but I do not in the least regret that which enables me to sign myself your revered and delighted name-father." 2 years later, Mrs. Ide, Annie's mother, actually brought her daughters all the way across the world to visit their father in Samoa, so they got to meet, finally. And as luck would have it, they arrived on the 12th of November, which is one day before their shared birthday. That was just good fortune. So the next day, right after she arrived, she was guest at a huge feast. Stevenson was very well known in the island, so they were going to have a big party for him anyway, and hadn't realized he'd bequeathed his birthday.
Right, so it's not actually his birthday anymore.
So she sat beside Stevenson at the end of the dais and received many fine gifts, and finally got this wonderful birthday she'd always hoped for.
And I guess she could imagine it was all for her, since it's not his birthday anymore.
And legally, I guess it was. And they repeated that the following year and even added a dinner party in the evening. But then Stevenson died in December 1894, so that was the end of their shared celebrations. Anyway, I'm delighted to say that Annie kept her end of the bargain. She grew up and married a congressman, in fact, but honored Stevenson's birthday on November 13th every year. And, in fact, toward the end of her life, bequeathed his birthday to her niece, her sister's daughter, the British author Anita Leslie, who's the daughter of the Irish poet Shane Leslie. And Anita, too, honored Stevenson's birthday. She told a reporter in 1934, "My aunt has always kept her birthday on the day that RLS gave her. She will do this, of course, for her whole lifetime. When it comes to me, I shall do the same. My own birthday is November 21st. When I inherit RLS's birthday, my own will join the limbo of forgotten things." I've been thinking about this week, and it seems to me that once Stevenson's birthday became unmoored from Stevenson, so to speak, and he bequeathed it to someone else, then it's a piece of property like anything else. He gave it to Annie, Annie gave it to Anita, and presumably it's someone's property now. And if that person's honoring it, then fine. But under the terms of Stevenson's initial document, it seems to me if they're not, then it devolves onto the sitting president of the United States. So I'm not an attorney, but it seems to me that Barack Obama's birthday is November 13th, as long as he's in office.
Only if somebody else isn't using it.
That's right.
But what happens to Barack Obama's original birthday? Presumably it's not November 13th.
I don't know.
So does he have two birthdays?
He either has two, which would make him age twice as fast, or he inherits his own again when he leaves office.
So his own is suspended while he's in office.
That's my guess.
Okay, I think so.
If you're an attorney, write in and tell us what you think.
We'll have a copy of Robert Louis Stevenson's birthday bequest in our show notes.
A poem. The Story of Esaw Wood by W.E. Southwick. This is from Carolyn Wells' 1918 anthology, Such Nonsense. The Story of Esaw Wood. Esaw Wood sawed wood. Esaw wood saw wood. All the wood Esaw would saw, Esaw would saw. In other words, all the wood Esau saw, Esau sought to saw. Oh, the wood saw, and oh, the wood saw with which wood saw wood. But one day wood saw no wood, and thus the wood sawed was not the wood saw if wood saw wood. Now wood saw wood with a wood saw that would saw wood, so Esau sought a saw that would saw wood. One day Esau saw wood, as no other wood saw wood. In fact, of all the wood saws wood ever saw wood never saw a wood saw that would saw wood, as a wood saw wood saw wood, and I never saw a wood saw that would saw as the wood saw until I saw Esau wood with the wood saw wood. Now wood saws wood with the wood saw wood. Oh, the wood saw, would saw, would saw. Oh, the woods would shed, when would saw wood, with the wood saw wood. Finally, no man may ever know how much wood the would saw, if the would saw all the wood the would saw. At the end of that, Carolyn Wells writes, well, you don't have to read it.
So we had some listeners write in to say that they really enjoyed hearing Greg try to solve a lateral thinking puzzle on the show last week. You did very well, I thought.
Did terribly.
It was a hard puzzle. This week, I'm going to be the one in the hot seat, which is why I'm being very sympathetic to Greg for having done it last week. So that means Greg's going to give me an odd-sounding situation, and I'll have to figure out what the underlying explanation is by asking yes or no questions. And like he had last week, I'll have 3 minutes to try to solve the puzzle on my own, and after that, I'll start getting hints, and hopefully at some point, I will eventually be able to solve the puzzle. But
you're better at these than I am.
I know, but it's like this time pressure. It's like, wow. Okay, all right.
You ready?
All right, yeah, I guess so.
This is from Erwin Brecker's 2010 book, Lateral Thinking Puzzles, and he says this is actually true. He says it happened after a party in a Leicestershire country estate. You ready?
Okay.
Joan and her boyfriend Fred, who lived in Stockport, were invited and given one of the ornate, if old-fashioned, bedroom suites for their stay. The party lasted the whole weekend and was a delightful affair. Catering was superb, and the congenial atmosphere turned the get-together of old friends into an unforgettable experience. On Monday morning, most guests had departed, and Joan and Fred prepared for their journey home. Having finished their packing, Joan looked around as if searching for something. She finally turned to Fred and asked jokingly, "You haven't by any chance drunk the glass of water on the dressing table?" Fred nodded, and all of a sudden, pandemonium. Joan had to phone the Automobile Association's rescue service. Less than an hour later, an AA man arrived, hitched her car to his breakdown van, and towed the embarrassed couple home, where they arrived after a 2.5-hour journey. What happened?
That's a very long, confusing setup. Okay, so the problem is that he drank a glass of what appeared to be water that he shouldn't have drunk?
Yes.
Was it actually water in the glass?
Yes.
Just water?
No.
There was something else in the glass besides the water?
Yes.
The key to the car?
No.
A liquid?
No.
A solid?
Yes.
One solid object in the glass? Multiple solid objects?
Yes.
Does it matter how many?
Yes.
The specific number matters?
I would say so, yes.
Fewer than 10?
No. I mean, yes. Sorry, yes.
Fewer than 10? 2?
Yes.
There were 2 solid objects. Were they identical?
Nearly so, yes.
Okay. And he drank them?
Yes.
Is he going to be in medical problems, or does that matter?
No, he's not.
I mostly need to figure out why then they couldn't start their car, because he drank something that they needed to start their car?
No.
Something they needed to get the car to operate properly?
No.
Something they needed to get into the car?
No.
Something they needed to help guide their way home?
No.
Something that would prevent the car from operating properly if he's in the car with this in his stomach?
No. No.
Okay, are the objects made out of metal?
No.
Plastic?
Yes.
Only plastic?
I don't know. I can't say. I don't know.
And they must be small enough to be swallowed by a man.
Yes.
Are they objects you would normally find in a car?
No.
Objects you would normally find in or on a human being?
I can't really answer that.
Objects you would normally find in somebody's purse or wallet? Never mind.
You can rephrase that. I might have a better chance.
Would these normally be kept in somebody's pocket or carried about on their person somehow?
Yes. Yes.
Because if these objects were just missing, if they had been thrown in the trash, would they still have had to call the automobile club?
Yes.
Does this matter what year it happened?
No.
This is very hard. They were unable to start their car.
No.
They were unable to safely operate their car.
Correct.
The objects had something to do with the safety operation of their car?
Yes.
Fuses?
No.
Would the lights have worked?
Of the car?
Yes.
Yes.
Would a specific system have not been able to work properly?
No. No, that's not the case.
That's not the case. Some safety system in the car would not have been able to work properly.
No. No, that's not the case.
But they would have been unsafe to drive the car without these plastic objects.
Right.
Without them being able to use these plastic objects as they were intended to be used.
Correct.
because these plastic objects were unavailable, the car could not be operated safely. But it could be operated.
Yes.
Just not safely.
That's 3 minutes, so I'm giving you a hint.
Okay, was this something that the driver would need so the driver would be able to be safer? Would it matter who the driver of the car was?
Yes.
It does matter who the driver of the car was. This is like hearing aids. It was somebody's hearing aids. So they.
That's not it.
Oh, but it's something like that?
Yes.
No. Contact lenses.
Yes.
Oh.
He drank her contact lenses. She couldn't drive because she was too nearsighted to operate the car legally. And her husband didn't drive. And no one else was available to drive the car. So without the contact lenses, neither of them could get home. So the only way to get there was to get the car towed.
Oh my gosh.
You did very well. You got it.
That's a strenuous workout.
That's less than 4 minutes. It's way better than I did. Good for you.
Well, we'll try another one of these next week, and Greg will be back on the hot seat.
Okay.
Well, that's it for another episode for us. You can see our show notes at blog.futility.closet.com, where you can post comments or questions, listen to past shows, and see the links and images mentioned in today's episode. You can also email us at podcast@futilitycloset.com. If you enjoy Futility Closet, be sure to look for the book on Amazon.com, or check out the website at futilitycloset.com, where you can sample over 8,000 captivating diversions, perfect for filling 5 minutes or 50. If you'd like to support Futility Closet, you can recommend us to your friends or leave a review of the book or podcast on Amazon or iTunes. You'd be surprised at what a help that is for us. Our music was written and produced by Doug Ross. Futility Closet is a member of the Boing Boing family of podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.